Hey everyone, it's Dr. H, your friendly wargame guy at the Air Command and Staff College, and I want to talk a little bit about the spins for the Poland game, um, the war in sort of Eastern Europe. There is both the operational map. There are two other operational maps that come with it. We'll talk about those in a second. And then there's the strategic display. And the strategic display is different than the one in the either in the Pacific or in Iran. So this strategic display shows the Baltic Sea, right? So we have the Baltic Sea, which is all of which we can see, sort of divided up into sea zones. Those operate as normal. And then there are inshore boxes that line up with different parts of the Baltic Sea areas. So the rules as normal apply, right? Like control the sea areas. There are modifiers for detection there. Control the inshore boxes, and moving around in there is contested, just like it normally is. Note that the North Sea is sort of this inset box over here, and that is its own zone that places can exist. Keep in mind that the map shows us east of Denmark, and the North Sea is west of Denmark, and so if you want to travel between these zones, it takes some movement. It takes a movement to move sort of from the North Sea to near the Baltic, and then another movement to move into the Baltic. Okay, so also keep in mind we'll talk about air ranges in a second, but keep in mind there's also some air range implications there. So over here, the Baltic states are largely represented by these land areas. Land areas are like land areas on the Pacific map, but contiguous in some cases. So all movement in a phase is just from one land area to the next. All units inside a land area are adjacent to each other for purposes of detection and any other purposes that come up. All units inside a land area in a combat phase fight. It's fairly simple. Land areas that are not under Russian control, if the Russians move into and eliminate all the units or push all the units in that zone out, then they have to clear it, and the minimum safe sacking size is 4. So it's one of the harder areas to clear, each one of these spots. So keep that in mind, right? This is a map. There's going to be combat in the zones. Move from one zone to another. It takes the movement to do it. If you look down here, right, then we're going to see this boxed in area. That boxed in area represents the part of the strategic map that's also on the operational map. So if you are in, so you have to be a little bit cautious, and remember that some of these spots on the operational map also correspond to these land zones. So you can be in both at the same time. Just keep track of it and do a good job of keeping an idea of where you are. If you're on the operational map, you're on the operational map for movement and combat. If you're on this map, you're in the land zone for movement and combat. Some of these land zones that you can see, Kaliningrad and parts of Lithuania, this province, Sudiva. I'm sure the Lithuanian student, if we have one this year, is going to find me and kill me, is just completely on the map. If you're in the other ones like Vilnius, you can either be in the Vilnius land area or on the map of Vilnius. Belarus is down here. Also important to remember that Belarus is both a land area, Russia's a land area, but also it does appear on the map in certain locations. So that's the strategic display. Let's talk a little bit about air distances. If we scroll all the way over here, right? So basically we have the areas off the map. Sorry, I'm trying to see around my cat Archimedes. He's very cute, I promise. So we have these areas that are off the map that are Europe. That's zone 1. That's one zone. So moving into Poland would be one zone. So M's in Europe can fly into Poland. M's in Poland can fly into Europe. To make it into the Baltic is another one from Europe. It's 2 to get over to the Baltic states, Russia, or Belarus, right? So long-range aircraft are required to get that far. Fundamentally, moving in and moving to, if you want to connect strikes with off-board air assets in these areas, you may have to pay tanker points in order to make them unlimited and move them in. So that's the strategic display, right? If you then look over at the operational map, where'd my arrow go? There's my arrow. You'll see that we have 2 smaller maps that represent Gotland and Bornholm. So if Soviet forces land on those islands, if Russian forces land on those islands, you can conduct operations on this map, just like it's an operational map. Rather than just fight in a land area, you can maneuver around each other. There's Visby on here. If anyone has a battle at Visby, I will owe you $1. Just come and find me if there's a battle in Visby, and I will give you $1. It'll be fantastic. The other big thing to think about on this operational map is the Kaliningrad Railway. The Kaliningrad Railway runs through Lithuania. So that means during war, the Lithuanians probably won't let Russia actually reinforce Kaliningrad. They'll have to force open the rail line. Until that happens, Kaliningrad maintains its own track of supplies. So there's a stash of supplies in Kaliningrad. If you're going to spend points to affect things in Kaliningrad, like rebuild sand batteries, etc., you have to spend from the Kaliningrad stash until the rail line is restored, and that means seizing control of the cities on the way to Kaliningrad. So you've got Vilnius, Suduva, etc. on that rail line from Russia. The Russians have to seize it in order to open the Kaliningrad rail line. Once the Kaliningrad rail line's open, you no longer have to keep track of separate supply for Kaliningrad unless NATO closes it again. The other thing you can remember is that Russian airborne units, there are 2 versions. One is if they had their vehicles, and one is if they don't. You can't pair-drop the version that has their vehicles, but you can swap them out if they're in Russia, basically. So you can move the units in, conduct an invasion, move them out, pair-drop them back in. So hopefully that's clear and makes everyone understand what's going on in Poland. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.